Everyone, welcome to Uncapped Notes Live. I'm Haley Bryant, and I'm so lucky to be joined by a good friend and venture fellow, Parul. Parul, welcome to the show. Would love to hear more about you.
Thanks so much, Haley. Happy to be here. I'm Parul Benyan. I'm from the Netherlands. I work as a freelancer for startups and VCs. So happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, you're burying the lead a little bit. So whenever we have like a super technical question, often things, I feel like you've been pulled into like biotech deals, Parul, which we don't even invest in. You've looked at like research related products for me. Tell us a little bit more about where you tend to lean in.
I tend to lean in more of the technical stuff where I also have to learn because then I go down this rabbit hole. Today I had something with like post-quantum cryptography, and then my boyfriend knows a little, and then we just like leaned into it, and then we were like discussing and like, okay, that's my gap. So I'm gonna go on a rabbit hole next week in post-quantum cryptography. So it's all just about learning, and I read The Economist cover to cover every week. So total nerd in that. That's why I know like facts which are just total goofball and strange. That's where it's just reading a lot.
I love that. And that explains a lot about you, actually, because you always seem to have a great nugget of knowledge from so many disparate areas. Before we jump into today's deck and kind of taking a look at what you love about it, what questions you might have, and things that you might refine with the founder, we have to ask about your background. Like, where is that?
My background is biology and AI, and then it's in more business development. And then I started learning about venture capital 3 years ago and have been small check angel investing for 5 years. So it has evolved, let's say.
That's incredible. And I love that you gave the LinkedIn appropriate background. I was going to nerd out about your background photo because it's just so jaw-droppingly beautiful. Where is that?
Yes, here you go. So that's Col di Nivole. It's a dead-end pass in the Italian Alps, and you can cycle to the top of it. I haven't been able to do it on a non-electric bike yet, but it's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, and it has two lakes, and it's really, really beautiful.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing. Like it makes me just want to go away for the summer, like the later stage VCs. Just kidding. Don't worry. We're here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's deck. I think, is it Xfera that we're talking about today?
I call it Sphera.
Sphera.
There's different way. I call it Sphera.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Sphera. Maybe before we jump in, maybe you could share just a quick note on either what they do or what drew you to it. We'll go through each of the slides, maybe leave the commentary for the end for the most part, but just try to understand what they're trying to say in each slide. And then we'll come back and sort of recap, evaluate, and make some suggestions.
Yeah. So what really got me interested in picking this slide is, okay, there are limitations to a GPS, and they were proposing a new method to be not reliant on GPS navigation. And it's extremely crucial in some environments, like, when you have like a disaster, or when you have say drones, or when you have a conflict, and when the power systems are down, you really need alternate forms of positioning. So that's what drew me to this. And what they are doing is they're building an alternative to the GPS, and we'll see how they're trying to do it and what questions I had.
Awesome. Parul, thank you so much for opening us up with the problem versus the solution. They lead with the solution here, but it's actually so interesting to hear more about the problem space and the types of customers that are facing this problem. So let's go ahead and jump in to the deck. So quick overview slide, fine. Interesting. So this is a little bit about, I guess, the team and their origin story and entry into the problem. We'll continue unless you want to touch on anything here.
So I like personal stories. One thing is that there's also alternate ways of navigation than GPS that current devices use. And I don't see here when it's absolutely critical. I don't see sort of the drone or the automation or the robotics that they also had on the first slide. So that's sort of what I'm missing. I see a completely different subset here.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And I agree. I love a personal story as well. Although I would love a little bit more color on them and threading the needle between where they started and where they are now. But we'll continue. Okay. The alternative to GPS. Wow.
Ooh. So here, what I saw was okay. The visual GPS. My question is okay. How are they doing it? Because it's not visual GPS is not something that is built overnight. There's a lot more companies working it. I want to really know at this slide, okay, what is sort of their edge? How are they building it? And what is sort of they're doing that the other players are not doing in the field yet?
I feel like this sort of idea, and maybe I'm butchering this, Parul, but has been so in the news recently with the understanding that Niantic was building this kind of visual map with Pokemon Go with something like 30 billion images or something crazy. So is that the kind of technology that they're exploring?
Yes, that's the visual positioning system. So somebody walks around and maps the entire area, and then you like define features, and then you sort of use various technologies to identify waypoints in there and overlay all of that information on a structure and an environment. Um, but they are doing that, but I'm still trying to figure out what is different than all of the current players. Because if you just look at sort of the indoor positioning, you see it from like bigger players like Apple, Niantic, others, and you also see it from sometimes like very micro players, like those virtual reality AR. It's all sort of mapping the field. So I'm still missing. Okay, great. How are you doing it different?
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting. So getting into the innovation earlier in the slide might be helpful. I'm getting the sense that they've developed a really incredible technology, potentially. We'll find out, but we don't get a lot of color through these slides. So let's continue. Okay, we're seeing a few different ways that this could work. And this may sound terrible for my speaker, but I'm going to move.
That was a lot of music. They're
A
just
lot of music.
explaining the VPS technology, but again, I don't know what is different that they're doing compared to all the other players yet.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like we need to kind of almost skip ahead to that point. So they're kind of reinforcing the problem and the solution, which is, oops, sorry.
And
It's
this is
almost
just
like
in.
the thought isn't fully formed yet on this.
I see the comparison to GPS, but I don't see what I want to see is the comparison to the other visual GPS providers that are there.
Makes
So
sense.
that's the unlock that I want to see.
Okay. Huge market. What do you think of this market?
Numbers at an early stage are sort of magic. So for me, I do not. Yeah, your TAM is so big, your Samsung is so big. I care more about sort of how is the initial customer feedback. What are they doing? What is the output of their technology from the initial customers? I worked as a consultant, and I know these numbers sometimes cannot mean anything.
Yep. Totally. And it looks like they're thinking about capturing 30% of the relevant US SAM, which seems quite aggressive in a 5-year period. Let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is more on the business model, it seems.
Yeah. So, from what I know, also later in the slides, okay, geographic licenses, but you need access to all the data sets. How are you going to get that? If you're going to an airport, how are you going to get? There's a lot more steps that need to be done in mapping it out. So the timeline for you to like make something very specific for a customer is very, very long. And the sales cycle are very, very long if you're going geographic licenses. And I have a fun fact regarding to geographic licenses. And then embedded licensing, of course, that's a little bit more easier because if you're going to a drone manufacturing supplier, they can accelerate because it's a lot of advantage to them to have this kind of technology, to have this kind of like digital twin for themselves. But again, the embedded licensing, that would lead to like, if they can get those orders, which are again not small, short sales cycle, then they get sort of very high margin, high value orders. So I would like to know what is the difference and what is sort of the market pool they're getting from both of the segments, and which one are they targeting first?
Yes, definitely agree. And the kind of dual approach, so going through government and then these more commercial applications, it does seem like there's some sequencing they need to navigate here for sure. I'm still, to your point, just unsure how this even works. And you talked about other competitors broadly and Google and Apple and others. I would even just think about if it is satellite related, satellite companies having a unique advantage. Like, how do you do this without hardware? I'm a bit confused.
You have to manually map each location. And you can use like some data sets, but those data sets are not as rich in many parts of the world to a street level as in some of the developed world Google Maps are, which are a little bit easier API for them to have. So I would really like to know, okay, how are you getting those data sets? How are you sort of unlocking the value? If you're going embedding, you have to go like customer by customer. How much time does it take you to develop that technology in-house? If you're going for government contracts, how many approval layers you need to go before you can get like all the access to all the parameters and all of the insights of an airport and all of the functionalities? Because there's a lot of sensitivity around those too, around, public assets.
Yeah. I'm concerned that we're still just hearing visual cues and just not a lot of specifics here. And did you mention a couple of, at least one of the potential competitors? Like, is this giving you any more confidence around that competitive positioning?
I still don't know how exactly they're different at this point of time. I still don't know exactly what the product is. And I do think there are more competitors than they have listed here. For me, those would be like really good elements to have.
Yeah, interesting. We also haven't seen like a really clear focus on initial customer segment, which we know, to your earlier point about the two different sides of the market, it can be really challenging for early stage startups that don't have a lot of resources if they're not very, very focused. So interesting to see that an airport is the first customer.
Yeah.
Let's continue and see if we can learn more about the product. Well, here's the team. What jumps out to you about the team, Parul?
The board of advisors at least have the relevant experience. I believe anybody can do everything, so I'm going to overlook the fact that some of the team does not have the domain specificity. But in that, I would like to know why are they so interested in the problem that they're willing to spend and risk a considerable time in their life on this problem. And that doesn't really jump out to me as of yet from these slides.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Let's continue.
Okay, it's just again they're demonstrating. Ooh, okay. It's not a lot of money that they're asking. I still would love to know what is their differentiation and why they're asking this money for.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's the deck. So we got through these slides. Maybe let's do this, Parul. What are your biggest open questions? What do you like? And what do you want to take a call here? And I'm happy to chime in as well.
I like the problem space. There's a lot that needs to be done around the world in this problem space. The questions that I have is, what is the exact technology? How far have they built it? Of course, they have deployed it in certain environments. How has that been? How has some more sort of insights into how sort of their pathway to getting those customers have been? Have they like also talked to like manufacturing or like drone operators because it's going to be super cool? I know in their slides they have mentioned also some in their business model that they are going to go global positioning. How are they going to get all of those data sets? How are they going to sort of achieve that at scale within the time frame they have listed? Because if you see the maths around their projections, those are extremely aggressive. So for me, these are really open questions, and I would want to know more by talking to the team because the deck only does as much justice. But those would be the questions that I would focus on.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm kind of taking away from your analysis and largely agree with is that the market is huge, and if they can land some of these large customers, given the potential ACV or an average contract value and the margins, there could be a really compelling business here. But it's not clear that businesses would need to buy from them specifically versus other customers, and then how it works. I wonder, given the academic background of one of the founders and their PhD, if there's a concern around sharing proprietary knowledge and wanting to tease instead of say directly for risk of their IP, being at risk. So I probably would ask a few questions async here. I guess a flag is, we're happy with an early draft of a deck and it doesn't need to look pretty, but ideally the story makes some sense. And I didn't see a really clear arc around why this team, why now, and why they are uniquely positioned to win in a space where there are so many dominant players that are so much better capitalized to go after this space if it is this huge opportunity. What I was really excited about was that robotics use case and kind of the moment that we're in where you could imagine, if they land a few contracts at a time when that industry is growing, pretty aggressively, or will over the next 5 years or so, that could make this scale much faster. But I think in general, we've seen, to your point, longer procurement cycles, and just sort of this failure to launch energy. So I'm a little on the fence here. I would want to spend some time as an angel, potentially, just wanting to kind of coach them on the story piece and making the idea a bit more legible, because right now it seems like it would be a lot of work to kind of get to that starting line,
Yeah.
to raise around.
And I would also tell them that to be careful of the numbers in the last few slides because some of them don't backtrack if you do the math. So that will be, of course, those are only projections, but you have to sort of have all of them lined up.
Yeah, that's a really good catch. I did not go deep on that, but I guess if we were to kind of play this out for a second, let me just share the deck again. So if we were to think about like what are the like three key things that it would be great to see from this team and sort of the sequence of the story, right? Parul, you led off with the problem space and who experiences a problem that could be solved by their technology. So it sounds like orienting people around the problem may be a good place to start.
Yes, definitely. And then what is their edge in solving this problem?
So it sounds like there's this elephant in the room where there are these huge incumbents. So we want to know right away, how are they best positioned to win? So probably something on the market and the competition really early. So like it's a huge market, and yes, there are other players. Here's why we're different. And then
Yeah.
you can imagine the personal story potentially, right? Like this is why I care about the problem. And it's not just something I'm, taking a detour on. To your question on why are they taking time away from their, precious lives and very important careers to build this, I think that's really strong. And if we were to kind of amp things up a bit, and I'm sure Gamma could help us generate a pretty snazzy deck pretty quickly if we were to give them this deck. Like partner at NASA, like in story research, which I don't know anything about, but I would imagine there's an aerospace or satellite tie-in. So trying to emphasize that and talk about that right at the top of the slide,
Yeah.
right? We are ex NASA and in AI, GIS, and logistics. Like, I think making that a lot punchier, and then maybe getting more into how it works, the traction they have, and kind of the longer term opportunity with their core customers. I'm not saying that's the right flow, but it seems like there needs to be a better arc here.
Yeah. And in terms of competition, there's also a lot of smaller players in this field that are just, say, doing AR, VR for museums, that are just building digital twins. So it would also be really nice to see not just the big competitors, but how are they also positioning themselves and their technology compared to the smaller ones.
Yeah. Packy McCormick wrote this great article recently. I keep going back to where he talked about how to find high ground in whatever industry you're in. And it's especially in these very complicated spaces with large incumbents. Like, you kind of have to prove that you figured out like what are the biggest constraints, how you could solve for that constraint, and then how you could compound advantage in that over time. So I think you're right. It isn't just incumbents, like I was saying, it is the smaller players too, and proving the wedge and the edge, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would they win that market? Not just why is their technology better, because that alone may not be enough.
And for me, I would have also liked to see. It's great that they're going with airports. I would also like to see sort of a walkthrough of what it is for a customer with their technology and without their technology, and sort of what are the benefits of like integrating their technology, and what is the wow moment for the customer. I'm also missing that for now.
Yeah, totally. And it seems like there's an opportunity, given that they've actually had this with some early partners potentially. I mean, they've made a bit of revenue, so there probably are some stories to tell. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully we can share this with the founders to frame some of the questions that you had and see if there's an opportunity for a longer conversation. I love that you picked this deck because I probably would have skimmed through it and not gone as deep into it, but bringing your expertise in and your interest in the space really did bring the potential opportunity to life if they can solve for some of those big open questions. So thanks for taking the time. I'm so grateful.
Thanks so much, Haley.
Thanks, everyone.